Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Coast to Coast Purview. We're already having a lot of fun here. And Beau, how are you today?
I'm not going to comment on how many times we filled this intro. So I'm going pretty well. There's a bit of a gap between this episode and the last one with a Purview rebrand. Everyone's been pretty busy with everything that's been going on. So for those that don't know me, I'm a technology specialist based out of Perth, Western Australia. I focus on the Purview stack of technologies, and that's where I'm kind of working and focusing on at the moment. How about you, Lou?
Yeah, for those who don't know me, I'm one of Beau's colleagues based out here in Melbourne on the Purview stack as well. Getting very busy at the moment, doing a lot of stuff around insider risk management. Actually, it's probably top of mind for me. But Beau, there's been a couple of new announcements that you wanted to bring up today as well.
Yeah, only a couple of things. So we've recently put out a blog post where we've got a write-up on how we're continuing to connect with broader ecosystems, think multi-cloud, multi-platforms, where we're using that via a different set of APIs. So including things like being able to use the Microsoft Graph API for Purview records management as a full write-up of it. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. You should check it out and have a look. The other thing I wanted to note is that there's a roadmap feature for information protection coming. It's going to change the way that labels are displayed. It'll make them much more visible, easier for users to apply those labels, and it will be able to give you a configuration item where you can assign a color to a different label. So highly confidential could be red, for example, to give it a bit more visual fidelity. It goes into preview in June, and then it's aimed for GA in around September. So I'll put those notes into the links into the show notes as well, and we can build it out from there.
Yeah, I've been playing with that one, and it's amazing how much impact color does have. And we're talking about color in the menus itself, not just on the document markings in this example, in this case, yeah?
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just to make it have a bit more of that visual fidelity. So when people are going through to label things, it's straight
Mm,
away they can kind of tell what it is.
excellent. So we've got a guest for today as well. It's Alicja Mosbauer. Please correct me if I've got that wrong, Alicia. Is that right or wrong?
Hi everyone. No, I'm Alicja Mosbauer. I'm with Circle T,
Excellent.
and I'm an information governance specialist, I guess you would say.
Fantastic. And what's your specialty? What are you going
Um,
to talk to us about today?
I'm going to talk to the team today about SharePoint Syntex, but also how that connects and you can be used with features like records management and information protection as well. So yeah, using some advanced technologies to apply some fundamental compliance capabilities to content in the SharePoint space.
Okay, awesome. Now, I guess, at least from our perspective, so syntax isn't something I typically work on directly. It's something that's coming into more and more conversations. Can you kind of explain what it is and how that ties into everything else?
Yeah, so syntax allows you to build what's commonly called document understanding models, which use a bit of artificial intelligence in the background and works through a process where you can identify and classify content automatically, plus extract additional metadata from that content automatically, plus apply labels to that information. And so for customers where we see this really being a fantastic functionality and capability is we work with lots of organizations that are migrating content into 365 or organizations that have lots of content already in 365, and people are finding it either difficult to find that information and so they want to classify it with a particular content type, or they want to do more with that content and so they want to extract metadata from that so that they can then potentially run a Power Automate or something else. But many of these organizations have requirements around governance, and so they can then use the features within Syntex to also classify with an information protection label or a record label as well.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask about, what problem does it fix, but it's really around, I guess it's a regulatory requirement as well for some of our customers. Helps in that
Absolutely.
regard. Yeah.
Yeah, so lots of government organisations, councils, even non-government organisations have requirements around protecting information for particular periods of time, and also internally classifying their information so staff have an understanding of what's more important and what is less important. So there's heaps of features in the compliance centre that can help with showcasing those features.
Yep.
But yeah, Syntex brings that capability into one place.
I guess I know we briefly touched on it because I heard you mention it before, but we know we can auto assign labels, we can do trainable classifiers, records management, and things like that. How else can we start applying retention labels and protection to content? Is that through Syntex?
Yeah, so with the trainable classifier, either Microsoft's published quite a large number, or an organization can build their own trainable classifier to automatically apply the labels. The difference with Syntex is it's really quite simple for an end user who doesn't necessarily have massive volumes of content to train, and they might also be new to artificial intelligence. So this is a really, I think, fast and easy way to start understanding both how artificial intelligence works, but also how you can label information and extract information from it also. So with trainable classifiers and auto labeling, you really are just placing a label on the content. With Syntex, you can do those features plus also extract information. So you can really see additional context about your document.
That's awesome.
I'd love to see a walkthrough. Can
Yeah,
you show
yeah,
us some of this?
absolutely, absolutely. So I've got I've created a little model
Okay.
that we're seeing on screen now called the Project Monthly Report. And this is a really simple process where I've trained a model to identify that content that looks like this is always identified as a Project Monthly Report. So this becomes a new content type in your SharePoint library. I'll walk through a process where I train the classifier. I then create some extractors so I can easily extract that information, and then I can apply that model in a number of locations. Now, where I'm actually going to start is the model settings. So in our model settings, as you can see here, I can very easily apply a sensitivity label. So this will automatically apply to the content when it's found in the library. And then I'm also applying a retention label to that information as well. So they're the rules that I've set up about the model before I start building the model.
Mhm.
Now, to identify the content that I train the classifier on, I've basically uploaded a set of documentation, and I go through steps in this process where I say, yes, this is an example, or no, it's not. So the part of the training is you need to have a negative example of the content. And then it's just as simple as going through and saying, yep, this is an example of a monthly project report. And so is this, and so is this, and so is that. So I just go through that process, each time selecting yes or no. And then I start seeing this little lovely green bar that says, hey, you've trained enough, you've labeled enough, you can move into training. So then I step through to the training process. And this is where I identify words and phrases in the content to try and understand why this is a monthly summary report. So in this particular example, the word project monthly summary report is one of the key identifiers. So I've gone through and said, yep, that's basically identified in each of these different, each of these different files. And surprise, surprise, this one's a match, but it's a negative match, which is the right thing because it's not really what I'm looking for. Now, for now, we're just going to explore, sort of ignore some of these other terms, but you can use a number of different terms, and depending on how complicated your report might be, it might require a couple of explanations. So after I've done the training piece, I then go through and I test, and that's another example, and it's positive. So I've created the first part of the trainable classifier. Now at this point in the process, I could publish that model, and it would go through and identify documents in a library that I've synced that to and classify them with my record label and my information protection label. But for what I'm trying to do as part of this process is create some additional metadata so that at a glance, the end user is looking in that SharePoint library and they can see that this is a project monthly report. Okay. So we're creating an extractor. So we're going to try and extract the project sponsor's name from each of the documents. So what we need to do is go through the documents and identify where we would expect to see the project sponsor's name in the document. So in this first document, there's no label. In the second document, it's Andre Jones. The third one, Kate Green. Fourth one is Phil Lee. Fifth one is also Phil Lee. And so I just go through this process and identify where each of those project sponsors are. After I've done my 5 documents, I then get this nice green light that says go through and train. And so here I need to provide Syntex with an explanation of why it would find that word. Now it would be, there's some nice templates in here that allow you to basically go through and create different extractors. So it might be that I'm looking after the word. So in here straight away it can see that all the examples, the name of the project sponsor, the word project budget appears after the label. So I just add that, and then to sort of help find that information, I can then tell it it's in the first part of my document. So it's looking for the word project sponsor up here in the first part of my document, and I save and train. Now, in some instances, it may be that the document requires multiple different explanations for Syntex to be able to find that particular word that you're looking for, or that particular bit of content that you're trying to extract. And so you can have a number of explanations in here. So we did after, we did before. So you can look for the word project sponsor. So it automatically populates that with that word. And then we can go through and save and train. So there's quite a number of different ways to find that information that the end user can play with. So great, all my predictions are right. I go through and then test, and then that particular project sponsor is right. Now, one thing I haven't shown so far in this process is the kind of original document that this is being built on. So this is a really, really simple Word document. It's just a made-up project, and so Syntex is able to extract that information from this kind of table. There's some other project information in there, so it's quite good at finding that information. So then I go through that process. I've exited my training, and now I'm able to apply my model into a particular location, and that location is here. Now, in this location, I've published a couple of models so that you can see that you can have multiple different types of document understanding models in your SharePoint libraries at once. So let's just go and look at what happens. Okay, now in this SharePoint site, what I've done is updated my project sponsor information. So that's currently not coming through. I need to go back and sync that process to pull that information out. But I also have published another document understanding model in here, which is about project weekly report. So what Syntex has done is it's identified that these documents up here, they're all project weekly reports, and they're different from my project monthly reports. They all have information about projects, and they have different types of retention labels on them. So these ones up here, reporting, the label that I used for that are non-record labels, whereas these particular documents, as you can see, they've all got the lock on them, so they are record labels.
Yep.
And then everything sensitive is official. So that all happens relatively quickly once you publish and sync the model into the location, and you can use this model in multiple different SharePoint sites. It's not just limited to one location.
Okay, that's awesome. So it's almost like a trainable classifier, but you don't need as much data in order to upload into it.
Yeah, and it does that. Then it also does that extra piece of pulling out, because with the trainable classifiers, you can't pull out. Well, you can't classify. You can't create a new content type.
Yeah.
And then you also can't extract information, those additional bits of content that you might want to use in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. That extraction is key. Like, I know a lot of people that'd be super interested in being able to do that I don't even think they know that this exists, to be honest.
Yeah, and then once that's extracted, also then becomes easier to search content around that as well. So it's just, yeah, really nice way. And particularly, not everyone's very good at having great naming conventions. We've all worked with content that was named once a long time ago, and everyone's forgotten the internal naming standard. So it's it's a really nice way to start identifying and classifying content.
I think anyone who's played with trainable classifiers in the compliance console, that would have looked very familiar, that training process you went through earlier as well.
I think it's a little bit different in my experience. You have to use a lot more content with the trainable classifiers,
Yes,
and there's a lot more accepting, non-accepting, and there's a lot more loading up of content required with the trainable classifiers. The limited amount of information that you need before you can publish is, it's quite fast. And because the trainable classifiers are running a back-end process to try and identify that content in your environment, it's also a lot longer to get going to start with your trainable classifiers the first time around.
And that point where you hit that drop list to see the sensitivity labels, they're coming from that repository of sensitive information types within information protection.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So you have to have built out your information protection labels and have those published. And the same with your records management. You need to have your file plan published and your file plan labels available to be used for it to be visible in Syntex.
Yeah.
So you need to have taken those steps in here to be able to then view them in the Syntex environment.
Yeah. So I guess we're leveraging work that you should already be doing anyway, as opposed to recreating labels and redoing work, I guess. Yeah, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and you're also helping your compliance and records team uplift those, compliance across the organisation by, using some AI, potentially engaging with different kinds of business users to try and actively encourage the uptake of records and protection of content in a different way and in the line of their work.
Yeah. It's like that whole thing, the easier we make it for an end user to be able to adopt this and see these things, the easier the adoption is going to be. So I think Syntex is awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that. That was enlightening. I learned a lot.
I hope so. Great.
No, really well done.
I'm definitely going to be having more conversations about it and doing a bit more reading myself. So
yeah, me too.
I think both of you just need to go and make some models.
Yeah, we'll come back to you on that, because after watching that demo, I can see the value of it. Absolutely. So thanks for that.
100%.
Hey, Alicia, we wrap up these sessions with what we call the toy box, where we talk about something, we're having fun with outside of work. And it could be something we've done or something we've bought in the past. I think I've pulled up all bits of musical gear because I do music when I'm not doing this sort of stuff. And Beau's got stuff he's talked about in the past. I think he's got something super special today. And before he starts, let me just say this is going to highlight the age difference right here, if it wasn't already apparent. Go ahead, Beau.
We look relatively the same age, Lou, so it's pretty good. You're looking good. So when I was younger, I used to collect these models, glue them together, you paint them, you have little board games with them. I've recently kind of gotten back into it with my son. So it's this Warhammer 40,000 stuff. It's like little plastic figurines that you glue together, you paint it, you can have little battles with your son. So I've recently gotten into that, super keen on it. So that's my toy box pick, I think. So in about a month.
It's great that you're doing that with your son, by the way, because I grew up sort of making model aeroplanes and painting and that kind of stuff. It's an evolution of the same stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, he does lots of drawing and stuff like that, but he wanted to paint stuff. So instead of him painting the table and the walls and everything else in the entire house, I'd rather get him to paint these. So it's his color picks are a bit chaotic, but that's all right.
Nice. Alicia, what do you got to share?
Well, I'm also reliving my youth. I've returned to playing soccer after a 15-year gap. So hitting the over 40 competition in Tasmania with the ladies, and nice. Trying to be able to walk on Monday mornings. So, yeah. And yourself, Lou?
Yeah, I'm in two minds about this, but with a bit of prodding by my family and my daughters in particular, I'm trying out the Couch to 5K program. About 3 weeks into the program. Mind you, it's week 3 of 8, Beau, so that's quite an accomplishment. I'm a fair way through, right?
3 weeks off the couch. Doing
Yeah,
well.
yeah, that's really
Yeah,
good.
week one is rolling off the couch. No, but it's one of those things, I guess, for me personally. I mean, I've never, ever considered myself a runner. It's just one of those things I've always thought it's just not me. I mean, I've ridden a bike in the past, and I've done weight training and stuff like that. But running was just something I'd convinced myself I could never, ever do. And that's slowly changing a little bit. I'm pulling up all right, and my blood pressure is responding, and everything is going in the right direction, which is good. So I'm having fun.
How many Ks there have you doing on week 3?
It chunks it down into things that, so it's 3 sessions a week, and it's all about giving your body a chance to adapt and sort of incrementally get better. So, it's multiple intervals of walking and running, and each week it gets a little bit more to the point where I'll be doing a 20-minute run next week. It builds up to about a half an hour. I mean, the aim at the end of the 8 weeks is to do 5K in about 30 minutes.
Well,
that's good.
We'll have to sign you up to Point to Pinnacle in Tasmania and pop down here and go straight for the half marathon.
Yeah, this is why I didn't want to bring it up.
Well, he's really messed up now because we're catching up in person pretty soon. So I'm expecting a 5 clicker when we catch up. So
yeah, we'll do a run around the tan down here in Melbourne.
Yeah, there you go.
Which happens to be 5K.
Sounds fair.
Yeah.
Made for it.
All right. With that, thanks for joining, Alicia. Great to have you on board and joining us. We've met before, and every time you do anything with us, it's always spectacular. So thank you again, and thank you to Circle T as well, obviously. Beau, it's been fun.
Yeah. I guess it's been our first time we've actually had an external guest on, so it's been really good to have you on as well, which has been perfect. You're the first one we've actually had on. I think we nailed it. Syntex is a pretty cool topic that I think we're probably going to get some follow-up on, so we might get you back. But as always, we hope you had fun watching this video. We're going to have another guest next month. We'll be doing a monthly cadence going forward. So if you do have any questions, you have any feedback, you want to come on and show something interesting, just hit us up on LinkedIn, and then we can go from there. So like always, we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.